Trusted sources, may I say in advance, moi ha ha. Okay, I've been through the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sirah literature, and I think I've solved the mystery of Muhammad's death. It's actually pretty straightforward. The Muslim sources tell us that Muhammad was poisoned. All we have to do is take everything we know about how Muhammad was killed and ask ourselves, who would have killed him in that particular way? Police do this sort of thing every day. They match up a bullet with the gun that fired the bullet. They match up fingerprints with the finger who left the fingerprints. They match up details of a crime with a criminal who has a certain MO. So to figure out who killed Muhammad, we just need to do a little profiling.
But the fact remains you can't prove that I did it. It could have been anybody. It could only be you. By your own admission.
The main difficulty we face is that lots of people wanted to kill Muhammad. The pagans wanted to kill him for conquering their cities, smashing their idols, slaughtering their men, raping their women, and enslaving their children. Jews wanted to kill him for seizing their land, destroying their communities, slaughtering their men, raping their women, and enslaving their children. Christians wanted to kill him for threatening to conquer them. Men wanted to kill him, women wanted to kill him, old people wanted to kill him, young people wanted to kill him. Muhammad made a lot of enemies.
What's the matter, Rodney?
I don't get no respect at all.
Fortunately, we can narrow down our list of suspects by ruling out people who would have killed Muhammad in some way other than poisoning. Certain killers like to strangle their victims. They're not going to use poison. Some people prefer knives. Some people set fires. Some people push their victims off cliffs. Colonel Mustard wouldn't poison anybody. He'd use a lead pipe in the ballroom. Interestingly, the Quran tells us how Allah would have killed Muhammad. We find Allah's MO, his preferred method of executing prophets, in Surah 69, verses 44 through 46. According to the Quran, if Muhammad were to invent a false revelation, if he were to make up verses of the Quran, Allah would kill him by severing his aorta. The aorta is the large artery that comes out of the left ventricle of your heart. Some Muslim sources call it the life artery. Let's look at 4 translations of verses 44 through 46, along with a commentary, so we can get a clear idea of what the passage is saying. The Haleli Khan translation reads, "And if he, Muhammad, had forged a false saying concerning us, we surely should have seized him by his right hand, or with power and might, and then certainly should have cut off his life artery." And in parentheses, the translators add, aorta. The Pickthall translation declares, "And if he had invented false sayings concerning us, we assuredly had taken him by the right hand and then severed his life artery." Dawud's translation reads, "Had he invented lies concerning us, we would have seized him by the right hand and severed his heart's vein." M.H. Shakir renders these verses, "And if he had fabricated against us some of the sayings, we would certainly have seized him by the right hand, then we would certainly have cut off his aorta." Just so we're clear on the meaning, and no one accuses me of misrepresenting the passage, let me read one of the greatest Muslim commentaries on these verses. This is Tafsir Jalalain. "And had he, namely the Prophet, fabricated any lies against us by communicating from us that which we have not said, we would have assuredly seized him. We would have exacted vengeance against him as punishment by the right hand, by our strength and power. Then we would have assuredly severed his life artery, the aorta of the heart, a vein that connects with it, and which, if severed, results in that person's death." So if Muhammad had been a false prophet and a liar and a deceiver, we know how Allah would have killed him. Allah would have cut his aorta. As long as no one severs Muhammad's aorta, then we can rule out Allah as a suspect.
I didn't do it. Just because the blood was in my hand doesn't mean I stabbed the man.
Now that we've got our strategy, let's turn to the Muslim sources so we can put together our profile. According to Sahih-Al, Sahih Muslim, and other texts, Muhammad was poisoned by a Jewish woman. Sahih-Al-Bukhari 26:17. A Jewess brought a poisoned cooked sheep for the prophet, who ate from it. She was brought to the prophet and was asked, "Shall we kill her?" He said, "No." Anas added, "I continued to see the effect of the poison on the palate of the mouth of Allah's messenger." People could see the effect of the poison in Muhammad's mouth. The poison apparently disfigured his palate, making his mouth look strange. Sahih Muslim 54:30. A Jewess came to Allah's messenger with poisoned mutton, and he took of what had been brought to him. When the effects of this poison were felt by him, he called for her and asked her about that. Whereupon she said, "I had determined to kill you." Thereupon he said, "Allah will never give you the power to do it." Muhammad tells this woman, "Allah will never allow you to kill me." Guess Muhammad didn't know Allah very well, because the poison ultimately did kill him. In case you're wondering why this woman wanted to poison Muhammad, she tells us in Ibn Sa'd. The Apostle of Allah sent for Zainab bint al-Harith, that's the woman who poisoned him, and said to her, "What induced you to do what you have done?" She replied, "You have done to my people what you have done. You have killed my father, my uncle, and my husband, so I said to myself, if you are a prophet, the foreleg will inform you. And others have said, if you are a king, we will get rid of you." The woman poisoned Muhammad because he slaughtered her family. Guess Louis Farrakhan got something right.
But as a man soweth, the same shall he also reap. And that's why Jesus told Peter, sheathe your sword, because those who live by the sword will die by it.
But there's a plot twist here, my friends. You see, Zainab didn't act alone. She had a co-conspirator, someone working behind the scenes, pulling the strings. Sahih-Al Bukhari 44:28. The Prophet, in his ailment in which he died, used to say, "O Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar, and at this time I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison."
Everybody's favorite psychopath, David Wood, said that the Prophet Muhammad was killed by poison, and that you got the gist of his argument in his video. So I'm going to be refuting some of his main point. I'm not going to be refuting the entire video. I'm just going to be refuting. I'm just going to be talking about some of the main points he brought up in that video, because there's a lot of inaccuracies. So either David Wood's ignorant of the facts, or he's just being dishonest. It's one of those two. But anyways, I'm going to correct some of the statements said in that video, and I'm going to show that the poison was one of the reasons the Prophet Muhammad got sick, and that sickness killed him. But that wasn't the only reason. So let me talk about, before I even get into that, let me talk about the whole Khaybar thing. So one of the arguments against the Prophet Muhammad, by atheists or Christian critics, is that the Prophet Muhammad waged war on these Jewish or Arab tribes, when in reality there was no reason for him to do that. So he was just waging war, not as a defensive measure, but as an offensive measure. And that's completely false, because if you read the tafsirs, if you read Tafsir ibn Kathir, Tafsir ibn Abbas, Tafsir al-Tabari, etc., if you read the commentaries on the Quran by the early Muslim scholars, you could see why the Prophet Muhammad fought wars, and most of the time, like 99% of the time, it was for self-defensive measures, according to the commentaries. But regardless, I'm just going to be focused on the Khaybar, on the war on Khaybar. The reason why Khaybar was invaded by the Prophet Muhammad and the early Muslims was because the Jews of Khaybar instigated violence against the Muslims by provoking the enemies of the Muslims to fight the Muslims. For the reference, see Ibn Hisham, Volume 2, page 272, and Volume 3, page 272. And Ibn Hisham, Volume 2, pages 270 to 280, etc. So basically, according to the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, the most authentic biography, which is this book, the reason why the Prophet Muhammad invaded Khyber, or the reason why the Muslims marched to Khyber, is because the Jews of Khyber were warmongers, or they were instigating war against the Prophet Muhammad. And according to this book too, that's it's found in this book too. So the Khyber Jews were warmongering against the early Muslims. So the Battle of Khyber was a self-defensive measure and not a offensive measure. Even though that book isn't always authentic, Ibn Asad, but that's what, so their own sources refute them. Their own weak sources refute them. But regardless, as for this whole poisoning, the whole poisoning of the Prophet Muhammad, and does that invalidate him from being a prophet of the God of Abraham? And I would say no. And the reason why is because the Jews, even if that Jewish lady was successful in killing the Prophet Muhammad, even if that's the case, which it isn't, but even if that's the case, that doesn't invalidate Prophet Muhammad of being a prophet, a prophet of the God of Abraham. And the reason why, and when I mean the God of Abraham, I'm talking about the God of the Bible. The reason why is because the Jews themselves were responsible for killing their own prophets. For example, see Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 26, where it talks about how the Jews were responsible for killing their own prophets. In Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 26. So basically, the Jews were responsible for murdering their own prophet. So even if the prophet was killed by a Jew or Jewishness, that doesn't invalidate him. That doesn't invalidate his claim to prophecy or his claim to prophethood. The other points he brought up was regarding the poisoning of he said that the Prophet Muhammad died. He ate the poison, and the poison killed the Prophet Muhammad because or the Jewish was successful in poisoning or assassinating the Prophet Muhammad, because Prophet Muhammad ate the poison, and that cut off his aorta, or his life vessel. And is that true? No, it isn't. For the issue here is that David Wood, he purposely cut off a important part of that narration in Ibn Sa'd. So basically, he was reading from Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, pages 251 to page 252. But he cut out the important part, and the important part is this. And I'm reading from Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, pages 251 and 252. So on Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, page 252, it says this. It says, the apostle of Allah, and this is the important part, the apostle of Allah, aka Muhammad, lived after this 3 years till, in consequence of his pain, he passed away. During his illness, he used to say, I did not cease to find the effect of the poison morsel I took at Khaybar and suffered several times from its effect. But now I feel the hour has come of cutting off my jugular vein. So this is an important part. The Prophet Muhammad lived 3 years after taking the poison, after eating the poisoned sheep or the poisoned goat from the Jewishes. So the Prophet Muhammad was a false prophet. If God really wanted to kill the Prophet Muhammad because he was making up stuff and he was fabricating it against the Quran, and as the Quran says that if the Prophet Muhammad is guilty of fabricating the message, God will kill him by cutting off his aorta. Why did God allow the Prophet Muhammad to live 3 years after he took the poisoned sheep? That's the whole miracle of it. The Prophet Muhammad took the poison, survived, lived long enough to complete the mission of Islam, then he passed away. So so David Wood has cut out that crucial part on. I think he did it on purpose, just to validate or just to sensationalize his point about this. So basically, even if you read Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, pages 251 to 252, it says that the sheep spoke, the dead goat or the dead sheep spoke to the Prophet Muhammad and told the Prophet and warned the Prophet Muhammad that it's poison. So there's another miracle here. The miracle was that the poisoned sheep or the poisoned goat told the Prophet Muhammad that it's poisoned and the Prophet Muhammad shouldn't eat it. It says, then the apostle of Allah said, hold back your hands, because this foreleg informed me that it is poisoned. So, according to Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, pages 251 to 252, the poisoned sheep actually talked to the Prophet Muhammad and informed them it's poison. So the Prophet Muhammad stopped eating it because it was poison. This is also confirmed in Sunan Abu Dawud. So that story is authentic. So basically, the whole point is the Prophet Muhammad did eat poisoned sheep or goat. That's true, but that wasn't the only reason for his death. The reason for the Prophet Muhammad's death is because he was growing old, and when you grow old, your immune system weakens, and the Prophet Muhammad just felt the effects of the poison. It wasn't the only reason that he died. He died because of his old age, or because his immune system was shutting down, or something like that. But it had nothing to do. The Prophet Muhammad said, but on Ibn Sa'd, volume 2, page 252, but now I feel the hour has come of cutting off my jugular vein. Notice what the Prophet Muhammad said. He said, now I feel. So that could be a reason, but that's not the reason. He didn't know what the reason. He just said that he felt like it. It was like his aorta was being cut off. That wasn't the reason. So the Prophet Muhammad just got sick and he died. Not necessarily just because of the poison. There were other factors as well. His old age, the fact that he got sick, and that's the reason. And another thing David Wood doesn't cite is that according to Sahih-Al Bukhari, the Prophet Muhammad had a choice to either live or die. So Prophet Muhammad was given a choice to be cured and live, or die and meet God. And the Prophet Muhammad said that I choose to die because there's no point in him going on. I'll read the hadith. It says, why is the sheikh weeping? If Allah gave the choice to one of his slaves either to choose this world or what is with him in the hereafter, and he chose the latter, and that slave was Allah's apostle himself. Abu Bakr knew more than us. The Prophet said, "Oh, Abu Bakr, don't weep," etc., etc. So this is found in Sahih al-Bukhari 466. So basically, the Prophet Muhammad was given a choice: either he could live or die, and the Prophet Muhammad chose to die and go back to God. So the Prophet Muhammad chose death instead of life. So that was a very noble choice the Prophet Muhammad chose. So basically, they would cut out a lot of stuff, or he wasn't being honest when he was bringing up when he was bringing up references. So he should at least, David Wood being honest. I don't think it's possible at this point. So basically, that's the whole thing about the Prophet Muhammad's death. It was a combination of factors. It wasn't just because of poison, and the Prophet Muhammad chose to die anyways. He said, "I choose God in the hereafter." So regardless, it doesn't invalidate his claim to prophethood, because Jews themselves were guilty of killing their own prophets according to the Old Testament. Not only according to the Old Testament, but according to the New Testament as well. We read in Matthew chapter 14, verse 8 to 12, Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verses 35 to 37, that the Jews themselves were accused of killing their own prophets. So we see that the Jews themselves were killed by were killed by their own people. We also see that during the time of Elijah, there were supposedly unnamed prophets who were put to death by Jezebel. Jezebel was one of the was a bad woman according to the Bible. See 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 4, verse 13. 1 Kings chapter 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 14. So basically, bad women were responsible for killing prophets, according to the Bible, according to the Old Testament. So basically, this is just my whole 2 cents about the whole the death of the Prophet Muhammad. So stay tuned. A lot more videos are up ahead.